Okay, welcome everybody to the panel this evening featuring Rotman Commerce. And before we begin, we just want to thank Jeff, Daniel, and Arbab for joining us this evening. As you can see on the splash screen here, Jeff is the Associate Director of Recruitment and Admissions. Daniel is a second-year student specializing in accounting at Rotman Commerce, and he's an events committee member for the Rotman Commerce Accounting Society and a student ambassador for the Rotman Commerce program. Arbab is a third-year student specializing in accounting at Rotman Commerce, and he is an executive member for the Rotman Commerce Accounting Society. So at any point during this broadcast, if anyone in the audience would like to submit a question for us to address during the second half of this broadcast, please feel free to send them along to info@coffeechatnetwork.ca. So you can actually see that email in the bottom banner on our screen. So throughout this broadcast, if you have any questions, whether it's for all three speakers or if it's just for one speaker in particular, please send us an email and we'll get to them in the second part of the broadcast. So with that, it's my pleasure to be able to invite Jeff to help kick us off in terms of just introducing the Rotman Commerce program.
Okay, so we're a four-year Bachelor of Commerce degree. Rotman Commerce is a program within the Faculty of Arts and Science at the University of Toronto. We are on the downtown St. George campus. Students would specialize in a specific area of business starting in their second year. It would either be accounting, finance and economics, or management. Management would include focuses that include financial analysis, international business, leadership, marketing, strategy. Part of what we talk about when we speak to students is that things that make us different from other business programs. We talk about the location, the breadth, and the teaching faculty. So being Toronto and downtown Toronto is a really big advantage, we believe. Having easy access to corporate partners. Toronto's the second largest finance center in North America, and we obviously have our alumni network centered in Toronto. The breadth of the program, being part of the Faculty of Arts and Science, there's over 300 other programs, over 4,000 different courses, over 50 different languages that you can complement your business education with. And lastly, our teaching faculty. I'd mentioned that we are part of the Faculty of Arts and Science, but we're also part of the Rotman School of Management. That's the professional business faculty, where the MBAs, the PhDs, the Master of Finance students, that's where they study, and what we share with them is some facilities and teaching faculty. So Bachelor of Commerce degree, location, breadth, faculty, key points, and things that you study: accounting, finance, or management.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Maybe now we can actually go to Daniel first in terms of telling us a little bit about your background, in terms of where you attended high school, and maybe what first motivated you to apply to Rotman Commerce.
Yes, thank you very much. So in terms of where I went to high school, I started around 2 hours north of the Toronto area in a place called Richmond Hill. That's kind of where I grew up. And in terms of what motivated me to apply to Rotman Commerce, because my high school was so business oriented from the beginning, Rotman Commerce was a name that I was hearing pretty much ever since the ninth grade when I was studying. So it was always kind of something in the back of my mind when I was going to apply in grade 12 to apply to Rotman Commerce, because it has such a great reputation, and just I've been hearing about it, researching about it ever since the ninth grade. So it was kind of like a no-brainer for me to overall just apply to the program and continue my studies there.
Great. And Arbab, over to you in terms of walking us a little bit through your background.
Yep, thanks, Tony. So I grew up in North York. It's pretty close to campus, I would say. But the one thing that really motivated me to apply to Rotman Commerce was the great faculty that's here. just last year, I know that 36 of our faculty members were like got the award for excellence in teaching. And to be able to learn from these is it's a privilege, right? You don't get to always learn about the person that wrote always learn from the person that wrote your textbook. So the faculty made it a huge part for me to apply to the Rotman Commerce program, and I believe it strengthens me to like excel in the business environment.
Great. And thank you very much for sort of giving us an overview. And maybe this, and I know, Jeff, you had touched on this a little bit earlier, but if you want to just go into a little bit more detail, or if you want to just highlight anything else that you believe distinguishes Rotman Commerce from other commerce programs.
Yeah, a little bit of repetition, I think, for me. Those three things that we talk about, location, breadth, and faculty. Also, being part of the University of Toronto, I think, is something students might underestimate a bit in terms of how important that is, because there's so many schools around here that they don't maybe realize what globally strong school it is. The last ranking that came out was 18th in the world. That's really impressive. And if you're looking at a global education that can, a global business career that can be really helpful. It's a very, very portable degree. Lots of services available within our program. We have our own career center that's only for Rotman Commerce students. Our career center services will do everything from one-on-one counseling to looking at resume clinics. They'll do mock interviews. They'll have wardrobe consultants come in, dining etiquette, information sessions, networking sessions, really helpful. We have a Center for Professional Skills, which is fairly new to really embed within the curriculum sort of the soft skills, sort of the non-specific technical or academics that are going to be really helpful moving forward for students as well. But globally, again, really highly ranked university. We're part of that university, and the three themes that we keep coming back to is location, breadth, and faculty.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. And here I'm going to throw it over to Daniel and Arbab. Anything else you wanted to sort of add on to what Jeff had mentioned earlier?
Daniel, do you want me to take it?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So the Rotman Commerce program, they do so much for like student life. I believe last year we hosted over 100 events just like dedicated for students for like networking. And on top of that, when it's like exam seasons, this program always puts in so much resources for students to feel like stress free and give them like resources to make sure they're not stressing over exams or like midterm season when it comes up. So I personally love that about how much the student life does for us, but I'm sure Daniel can add more onto that.
Yeah, definitely. Something that Jeff mentioned that I really want to stress is the location and the real estate that not only Rotman Commerce but the University of Toronto is placed on. It's so close to the financial district, and Toronto is such a great business area that being able to go on coffee chats between your classes and just little things like that, being able to connect with employers outside of networking events and outside of the boardroom, that's something that's honestly irreplaceable to me. So that's one of my favorite aspects about Rotman Commerce, which Jeff mentioned is actually very underrated aspect. I don't think it gets enough attention. I just wanted to shed some light on it.
Great. No, fair enough. And I think that that location aspect definitely is one of the unique advantages here at Rotman Commerce. And maybe I think that leads into sort of our next question. And Jeff, if you want to kick us off in terms of maybe walking the audience through what the application process is like for Rotman Commerce.
Sure. So the type of application you do is going to depend if you're a current Ontario high school student or not. If you are a current Ontario high school student, you're going to have to wait for your school to give you your PIN to apply to OUAC. But once you get that PIN, and OUAC is Ontario University's application center. So all Ontario University's applications are funneled through that website. So from Ontario, it's really quite easy, as an Ontario high school student. All you have to do is apply, and your school takes care of your transcripts. And the extra piece that you would have is a supplemental application, which you'll have access to after enrollment services that U of T acknowledges your application. So what happens is you apply to OUAC, that's transferred to our enrollment services here at U of T, and then we'll acknowledge your application. You'll have access to an application portal called Join U of T, and everything you need to know is through that application portal. In addition, if you're being asked to provide proof of English facility, if English is a second language for you, you'll also be notified through your Join U of T. If you're non-Ontario high school students, a little bit more involved. Although you don't need a PIN from your school, you can apply now. Applications are open for non-Ontario high school students, and you would be having to furnish your own documents. You don't need your documents to do your application. Do your application now, and what will happen is you'll go through those same acknowledgements, and then you'll be notified through your Join U of T application portal exactly what documents you need to furnish. Always an advantage to apply early. Our offers will be made starting in December all the way through till May. So the sooner you apply, the sooner you get your documents in, the earlier an offer of admission as possible.
Great. And that's great, great context there for the audience. And now maybe over just to Daniel to start us off. If you can just share a little bit about what the process was like for you, what you found to be challenging, or what you found to be helpful through this process.
So I went through the application process 2 years ago, and I applied in kind of late October. That's when my grades were sent to the university. And then about a week later, I got the email for the supplementary application. Something that Jeff said that I really want to stress is it's important to apply early, but as long as you're submitting your best work. Because the earlier you apply, the more rounds of consideration you'll be considered for, and that's just a better advantage for you. So overall, when I got the email, something I really liked about the supplementary application was that it gave me a chance to practice. I had unlimited practice rounds, which really allowed me to get used to the software, different like the different writing styles and how the video interview worked. So when I actually had to do the supplementary application, all the stress was basically gone. It was just a repetition of what I had done before. Obviously, the questions were different, but overall, just learning how to use the software and learning kind of how the website works, that was honestly one of the most important parts of the supplementary application for me. Something that I really like is that I applied earlier. So I applied just before the winter break, and I was able to, I believe, get considered for more rounds of acceptance.
Great. No, that's very helpful. And Arbab, anything else you wanted to supplement?
Honestly, no, Daniel covered everything, but if there's one thing I just want to say is like to take your time. Like if it's, I know students always have tests going on and at the same time you have to do your applications, but dedicate at least like, a couple of hours set aside just for your application. And in the end, it will really help you get through.
Great. And I think this is probably a good segue in terms of sort of our next question. And, Jeff, for you to kick us off, but, are there any resources that are available for the Rotman Commerce application process in terms of whether it's resources online or prompts or sort of tips, things like that? Anything I think you can share with students that you would find helpful?
Well, I'm going to start off with the actual OUAC process, and it's just really a series of drop-down menus, so it's really quite easy to work through. You would just choose University of Toronto, then you would choose the St. George campus where we're located, then you choose the Faculty of Arts and Science, and then the program Rotman Commerce would be your admission category. So that part's really quite easy. Again, there's going to be a difference whether you're a current Ontario high school student or not in terms of what's going to be expected of you for that application. It's all fairly clear through your Join U of T application process in terms of deadlines and what documents you need. If you do need documents, again, if you're Ontario high school or not. Sort of I guess the extra piece that we get asked about all the time is the supplemental application. What are we looking for and what's it going to look like? It does change slightly from year to year. We know that if we don't change it, it ends up on the internet very quickly. So we do want it to be a little bit different every year. But what we're looking for is an understanding of leadership, community, your ability to convey that to an admissions committee, an interest and a passion for business. We're not looking at sort of one specific type of activity. There's no silver bullet. We are also recruiting for diversity of experience. So we want people with lots of different things outside of the classroom. Another way I explain it to students is what I don't want to see when we're looking at the supplemental applications, and what we don't want to see is somebody who only studies, somebody who only gets good grades and doesn't do all those other things outside of the classroom. You know, some really common things that people do in Ontario, there's a lot of DECA students. If you are not from Ontario or you're from a school that doesn't have DECA, it's like a high school business competition. That's fairly common. Still get some junior achievement, not as popular in Ontario as DECA, but we still see some of that as well. Sports, music, student council, jobs, taking care of your family. A lot of students that actually run businesses already, particularly online. And lots of different things. Again, as long as you're doing something and you're able to convey it to us in a compelling and succinct manner, you know, we're probably going to like that.
Great, and I think that's great context for sort of students as they try to apply, and maybe Arbab, over to you in terms of anything that you used along the way that you found to be helpful as you went through that process.
Yeah, honestly, the biggest resource for me is I actually reached out to a current Rotman Commerce student when I was in grade 12, and they guided me through the whole application process, what the whole program's like, and I was kind of able to embed that into my application. So a huge resource that a lot of students miss out on is actually reaching out to current students. That can be either me, Daniel, or other student ambassadors, and we're always here to help. So yeah, so if you ever need any help, you always reach out to student ambassadors because we're a resource that are, I would say, very underrated for sure.
Great, and Daniel, anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, just adding on to what Arbab said, there's no better piece of a resource that you can give yourself than talking to someone who's already been through the process that you're going through now. So something that I did is I went to the Ontario University Fair and really just kind of gave out all my questions about what is the supplementary application like, and kind of do you have any tips for me? Now, obviously, they can kind of give you the whole spill, and as Jeff says, it does change from year to year, but they can kind of guide you in the proper direction of see kind of what they're looking for, and just as the things that Jeff said overall, what they're looking for and what they expect to see from the supplementary application. Another thing that I would have done if I knew about it at the time would be to contact student ambassadors, as Arbab said, such as myself and Arbab. It's a very underrated resource, and just because we came fresh out of the process, we can give you a couple tips on how to improve your supplementary application.
Great. All right, so for everyone in the audience, it seems like there's definitely a lot of resources available as you sort of go through this application process. And sort of, moving on from the application just to the program and the university, maybe Daniel, just over to you in terms of, what do you enjoy most about Rotman Commerce and sort of U of T in general, and maybe the one thing that has surprised you the most?
Thank you, Tony. The main thing that I honestly enjoy about Rotman Commerce and the University of Toronto would be the amount of resources that we have around us. So it depends on what you want to go, what you're looking for. If you're looking for academic help, we have academic advisors and we have tutors. If you're looking for career help, we have career advisors and people that are going to help kind of put you out into the working world and kind of give you a bit of a head start and not really just throw you into the deep water. That's something that I really love about Rotman Commerce specifically. And the thing that probably surprised me the most was just how welcoming the program was. You know, there's a bit of a reputation behind business programs and how they're a little bit tougher. However, coming in about a week or two in, I already felt like I was very embedded in the program's culture. And overall, I just felt like I wasn't really working against the program, but the program was working with me the whole way. So that's something that really surprised me and something that I'm very grateful for throughout my years here at Rotman Commerce.
Great. And Arbab, what about yourself?
Well, every time I'm bored on campus, there's always something going on at Rotman Commerce, you know, whether it's like a fun event. And it's going back to my point about student life. Like, they do so much for us. And so whenever I'm on campus, there's always something going on. And I always try to get myself involved in that. And overall, that has made my experience at Rotman Commerce like a great time. It's something that I'll forever remember. And what surprised me the most was like, I think I was able to meet like a family here at Rotman Commerce. And you expect from a business program it to be very competitive and the students would be rude to you. But surprisingly, very students are very kind. They're more than willing to help to you. I made friends with so many upper year students as well who guided me through recruiting, academics, and more. So overall, the whole culture of Rotman Commerce is something that I've enjoyed the most about this whole program.
Great. And I think all great perspectives to have. And sort of going specifically, and this is really Jeff following up on sort of something you mentioned earlier in terms of the specialist streams. Before we get to Daniel and Arbab in terms of how they chose their sort of specialist stream, anything else that you would want to share with students in terms of just thinking about that, sort of the timing and any other considerations?
So I guess really I should make mention of the requirements in the first year. There's three required courses or three required areas in the first year. They have to do micro macroeconomics. They have to do calculus for commerce students, and they have to do management. You have to obtain a specific score on those courses. So you would need a 63 in the two eco courses and a 63 in the cal, and you need a 67 in the management. Once you do that, you're able to choose a specialist. So you'd be going into your second year with a specialist. Again, they would be either accounting or finance and management with those different focuses that you want. Now, I also need to impress upon you that you're not going to be in that specialist for the rest of your life if you don't want to. So for example, if you choose accounting in your second year, you don't like it, you can change your mind again and move into another specialist. It's an undergraduate degree, so there's a lot of breadth to it. Even if you choose accounting, you're still going to get a foundation in finance, a foundation in management, so you are able to move around. Any undergraduate degree is going to become more and more specialized as you advance through your program. So, second year, third year, fourth year, be doing more and more specialist courses within that area that you've chosen.
Great. And maybe now going over just to Daniel first in terms of what, how you went about the process of choosing your specialist stream and any other sort of anything that whether you're considering or you think potential students should consider as well.
Thank you, Tony. So when I came into the program, I already had a bit of a mindset of going into the accounting specialist. It's just something that I learned throughout my business-oriented high school. It's something that I really wrapped my head around. Something that I really appreciated about the program was that it was very open. So me personally, I was wrapped around accounting. However, I had an open mindset. I knew that my interest could change throughout my first year. However, with the first year introduction courses such as management, economics, finance, accounting, and marketing, I was able to kind of diversify my view of business, and I was able to make a very educated choice by the end. So I know people that came into the program without knowing what they wanted to do at all. However, by the end of it, they were very educated and they knew where their interests lied, and they were able to make a very informed decision, which is something I really like about the program. They kind of let you study general business in the first year, and then after you've been educated and you can kind of have a more proper view of which specialist you want to go into, that's when you get to decide. So that's something I really appreciate about the program.
Great. And Arbab, what about your sort of experience and process there?
Yeah, so I took a different approach when it came to deciding on specialists. I actually did a lot of networking. I went to a lot of networking events, whether they were related to finance, accounting, or management. And I wanted to get a see of the industries that I potentially might be in. And I think I was able to connect more with the accounting industry. I met a lot of great people who explained to me what like the CPA designation can do for you. And ultimately, through all of that, and of course my academics, I came to a conclusion that I was going to specialize in accounting. But entering Rotman Commerce, I was very unclear about what I wanted to do. We all have our biases. I was biased toward finance at first, but through networking, I really had the chance to learn about new fields, new specialists, and I highly encourage every first year to get into networking as soon as possible because you want to know what you'll be doing in just like a couple of years, right?
Nope, fair enough. And I think all things to consider, and I think as Jeff mentioned as well, this is you do have that first year was more of a general year to start off before you really branch off into that specialization. And maybe back to you, Arbab, just really quickly. And I know you and Daniel both touched upon this a little bit earlier, But if there's any other additional detail about the student community at Rotman Commerce you wanted to specifically mention.
So in your first year, actually, you'll get to be a part of something called Flick, or a lot of people call it FLC, but it's a first year learning community where you get to meet a lot of students who have a similar timetable as you. And through Flick, I was able to meet a lot of my like current friends right now, and I'm still very close with them even in my third year. So I highly recommend that you join Flick once you of course get into the program. And I was also, there's a lot of external companies where you can be a part of. So I was part of CPA Ontario's Board of Ambassadors. So I had the chance to work with students from across Ontario on various events that CPA Ontario hosts, which was an opportunity that I saw and quickly applied to, which I always say to students to, whenever you see an opportunity, go for it, because you'll never get something, because if you don't apply to it, you'll always regret it.
Oh, fair enough. And Daniel, anything else you wanted to supplement there?
Yeah, so just like RBAB, I believe Flick is one of the more important things you can join in your first year, because putting networking and everything else aside, making friends is something that you really just want to accomplish throughout all stages in life. And as RBAB mentioned, Flick is something where you're in a group of students who have very similar timetables as you. So you're going to be seeing them around campus a lot, and just joining that first year learning community in your first year is one of the greatest things I've ever done, because I was able to make some of my closest friends, which honestly I believe our friendships will last long after university is over. So overall, the first year learning community is very important. As for my other extracurriculars, mine were more Rotman oriented. So things like the Rotman Commerce Accounting Society and being a student ambassador. Overall, there's a ton of student groups that you can join and a ton of different opportunities around you. Whether you want to get involved in Rotman or outside of Rotman, the University of Toronto is always there.
Great, and Daniel, that's actually a perfect segue in terms of sort of the extracurricular activities. Within Rotman Commerce, and maybe Jeff, if you want to go into this a little bit in terms of the various clubs that are available, and any other thoughts you might have about being a part of sort of the broader U of T campus.
So specifically for Rotman Commerce clubs, there's 23 now. I can't even remember all of them anymore, but things like an accounting society, which I believe both Arbab and Daniel mentioned. There's an investment club. There's a group for students wanting to work in nonprofits. There's a public speaking group called Toastmasters. There's a women in business. There's a Rotman Commerce Law Association, students wanting to go to law school, and just go on and on in terms of what you can do. So, something I need to impress upon students, so it's a wealth of riches, but you can't do everything, right? So you are going to have to sort of decide, but this is also a good first year to try out a lot of different things and see what you like exactly. And then in the broader context at U of T, one of the advantages is scale for us. So there's around 1,000 different clubs that you have the opportunity to join. You always tell students when we're speaking to groups, if there's a club that you want to join, it doesn't exist, you can start it yourself. So there is an awful lot of opportunity. And of course we want you to participate in the Rotman Commerce Clubs. Of course we want you to participate in U of T, but you're in the middle of the biggest city in Canada. There's lots of things to do.
Great. Thanks for that sort of overview, Jeff. And maybe, Daniel, to your point earlier, if you want to just elaborate on maybe some of the things that some of the other extracurricular clubs or opportunities that you've maybe taken a look at or considered, or you're actively involved in.
Definitely. So as mentioned before, I'm an events committee member of the Rotman Commerce Accounting Society. Short form is RCAS. And just overall what RCAS does is we inform Rotman Commerce about the accounting world and about CPAs and all the different industries you can go to through accounting. So something I really like about the student group is that not only are we a bunch of students together with a common goal to inform the program about this certain profession, however, we kind of create our own friendships and our own families and our own bonds outside of the meetings and outside of the events, which is something that I'm forever grateful for, because more often than not, these are the people that I'm going to be working with in the future. So being able to kind of collaborate with them and get to know them when at a younger age, that's something that's really important about student groups. And as I also mentioned, I'm a student ambassador for the Rotman Commerce Accounting Society, which is a very rewarding experience because I'm constantly interacting with high school students, giving them any sort of advice I can, because I know how I was when I was in this position of applying to university. I was very stressed. So being able to kind of calm them down and really tell them what to expect and kind of what Rotman Commerce is looking for, that's one of the most rewarding experiences I've had throughout my university experience so far.
Great. And Arbab, what about yourself in terms of the extracurricular sort of activities and opportunities that you've been able to either be involved in or have looked at U of T?
Yeah, so if student groups aren't your thing, which is totally fine, you can do case competitions. There's actually a lot of case competitions that happen in Rotman Commerce, and I took part in a lot of them in my first and second year, and I'm planning to do more hopefully this year as well in my fourth year. But outside case competitions, I actually did work during my second year. I worked at a cinematography company where I did like an accounting and finance role. And the program really, I was able to get a good balance with my academics, my extracurriculars, and work at the same time. But yeah, majority of my extracurriculars are very similar to Daniel. It's actually how I met Daniel through our student group, and through that group, we became very close as well.
Great. Excellent. And before we sort of jump over to sort of the live audience Q&A component, maybe I'll just hand it over back to Jeff. In terms of any, and over the course of sort of this broadcast already, you've mentioned several sort of things to consider for students as well. Dan and Arbab have given some piece of advice as well, but just anything else you wanted to sort of emphasize before we move on to the next component of our panel?
Well, we are looking at a number of different things, but really the higher your grades are, the more likely you'll get an offer of admission to come into the program. I'd mentioned before that we would start giving offers in December, stop in May. The response we get from students is, "Oh, I don't have any courses yet." We actually do use grade 11 grades. So at the beginning of the admission cycle, we'd be admitting on grade 11 marks, and all offers will have conditions on them. So something else about grade 11 is it can help you get an early offer, but you're not going to be refused on your grade 11. So if you maybe didn't do as well as you wanted to last year, that's okay, because in sort of the middle, we'll start looking at a combination of grade 11 and 12 grades. Most of the offers for Ontario high school students will be in March. Everyone else, the non-Ontario, they're spread out a little bit more. And then at the end of the cycle, we're looking largely at grade 12 marks. So in terms of advice, keep working hard, keep your marks up. If they weren't as high as you wanted last year, you still have an opportunity to get in. In terms of the supplemental application, give yourself some time where nobody's going to bother you. We always advise sort of an hour in terms of that supplemental. Make sure you tell people in the house that you're not to be bothered during that time. Every year we see one or two with somebody popping into the screen saying, "What are you doing?" So make sure nobody's going to interrupt you during that process as well. And relax, be yourself. It's meant to be sort of a conversation / job interview. I don't think there's any reason to get really stressed out about it. But just do your best. A little anxiety, I think, is always good, but it shouldn't be debilitating. So there's really nothing to be too concerned about when you're doing that process as part of the application.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And maybe over Daniel, just to you, in terms of any piece of advice you would give.
The biggest piece of advice I would give would be ironically something that I didn't do when I was applying to university, but I wish I did. And it would be to reach out to the university itself. So things like going on tours, contacting student ambassadors, it can kind of help give you a much more well-informed view of university in general and the application specifically for Rotman Commerce if you contact a Rotman Commerce student ambassador. It's not something that I did, but I wish I did, because it would have eliminated a lot more stress. I would have known a lot more about the supplementary application and the university in general. So overall, if I could get any advice to students listening right now, it would be to just contact the university, contact the student ambassadors, come on tours, anything you can to really get involved with the university before you submit your application. That's the best thing you could do for yourself.
Great. And over to Arbab.
Honestly, the biggest advice I can give is to try your best. Grade 12 is your last year of high school, and I'm sure there'll be a new season out of some show on Netflix very soon. But put that aside, focus on your grades, focus on your extracurriculars, because you'll never get this time again, right? And you want to maximize your opportunities that you're given. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. So that's I think that pretty much brings it to a close in terms of just the first part of our broadcast, and I think throughout sort of the first half hour here, gotten a significant number of questions from the audience, and I think now is probably a good time for us to sort of jump into the second half of our session today and just go over some of these questions. And for the audience, just so you're aware, as we receive the questions, we will try to address all of them. However, given that there may be overlap between questions and there might be similarities, we'll at our discretion try and sort of summarize and cover as much as we can, given the constraints of trying to collect this in real time as well. But with that, I think we can jump into our first question, which is related to the application process, and it's how should I prioritize what I want Rotman Commerce to know about me, given the word limit of the application. So Jeff, maybe you can just start us off in terms of what you think about that.
Well, there might be things that you want us to know about yourself, but you're going to have to answer the question as it's given to you. Part of what when I explain it to students, it's kind of like a job interview. And if you've had a job interview or you're familiar with the process of a job interview, one of the things you can't do is call ahead and say, what questions are you going to ask me? So we have very specific questions with rubrics, and they are randomized, so you're not going to know exactly what we're going to ask you beforehand. But you're going to have to, depending on the question, sometimes you have a little bit more time for the written questions. Some you can prepare for in advance. Other ones will just be timed, and the same with the video questions, they'll be timed. So you really don't have, you do have a choice, but you're not able to necessarily prep everything in advance and say, this is exactly what I want to tell Rotman Commerce. They're behavioral, so you're going to have to respond to the question as it's assigned to you.
Great. And sort of Arbab and Daniel, anything else you'd like to add on to what Jeff had said?
All right, Bev, do you want me to take this one?
Yeah, go for it.
So something that Jeff said that really stuck with me was make sure you're not dodging the question. You want to make sure you're answering the question as it's given to you. Obviously, let's say if you really want to include your extracurriculars and it relates to the question itself, feel free to sneak those in there. It's something that can really help make your application stand out. However, the most important thing is to answer the question and make sure you're not rambling on, because the word limit is pretty tight. So you want to make sure every kind of sentence you put in there is a point that you're putting out. And make sure that the biggest, honestly, just to wrap it up, the biggest thing I could say is just make sure answering the question precisely, making sure you're not rambling. And then obviously if certain things that you want to include into your supplementary application do relate, then feel to put those in. But overall, it's a pretty simple. For me, when I was in high school, I was overcomplicating it myself in my head as well. So I understand how the students feel these days. But it's important just to kind of simplify your mind and make sure you're answering the question.
Great. And sort of moving on just to the next question, and this is more related to sort of international applicants. But in terms of how to think about the SAT requirement for an international student, is there a specific cutoff, or how will that SAT mark be viewed in the context of sort of the normal GPA and other extracurriculars? So Jeff, maybe I'll turn that over to you first.
Sure. So in terms of SAT, make sure we're asking for it before you submit it. And really, the only time we're asking for SAT is if you're doing a U.S. curriculum. So that can happen, obviously, mostly in the U.S. But there are American international schools around the world. That's the only time we're going to be requiring an SAT. We do know some students that are doing different curriculums and are also applying to U.S. schools. They'll have written the SAT, but if it's not a U.S. curriculum, it's highly unlikely we'd be asking for it. There's not a specific cutoff. If we're looking at, if we're looking at U.S. applicants, there's a number of things in addition to SATs that we're looking at. Your transcript and that supplemental application. So we don't have a specific cutoff. Just like your grades, the higher your grades are, the more likely you'll get an offer of admission. The same for SATs and ACTs for that matter. But again, don't submit it unless you've been asked for it, and that largely is really restricted to U.S. curriculums.
Great. And sort of a common question that we've received is how best to contact the student ambassadors. So maybe Arbab, over to you first in terms of how best for prospective students to be able to reach you and Daniel and the rest of the team.
Yeah, so if you actually go to the Rotman Commerce website and then go to connect with us under the Future Students tab, you'll see an email that goes directly to the student ambassadors such as Daniel and I. And I can say it out loud if you guys want. It's rc.ambassador@utoronto.ca. That's it. And yeah, feel free to ask any question. You can even specify that you want to talk to Daniel or me or anyone pursuing what you might be interested in, and we'll of course get back to you right away.
Great. And maybe just back to Jeff as well very quickly. Looking at sort of domestic students as they apply, I know you mentioned earlier that there's no hard SAT cutoff, but in terms of domestic students and thinking about grades, is there sort of a hard cutoff, or how should students view that from a sort of domestic application perspective?
Sure. In terms of the cutoffs, I can give you sort of two sets of numbers. I can give you like a minimum competitive requirement. That would be a mid to high 80s, and that there's no guarantee that you'll be getting in with that, but it'd be somebody that we would be looking at. There's a possibility that you get in with those grades in addition to your supplemental application. In terms of a mean average, which sort of most students come in with, and I'm looking specifically at our Ontario high school students, like 92, 93, so low 90s, that would be, again, sort of what most students come in with. But you can certainly get in with lower grades than that. And, I'm sounding a bit like a broken record, but the higher your grades are, the more likely to get an offer of admission. But, that would be a range that I would say, yes. If I'm meeting you in person, I say, yes, I would encourage you to submit an application with grades like that.
Great. Thanks, Jeff, for that context. And some other questions that we received is in terms of applying to the Rotman Commerce specifically and others. So if, let's say, a student applies to Rotman Commerce, can they still apply for other programs at other campuses? And what's your view in terms of maybe applying to other programs in addition to just Rotman Commerce?
Yeah, so you can apply to one program per faculty. So we're on the St. George campus. That means we're the only program within the Faculty of Arts and Science that you could apply to. But other faculties include engineering, and we do get a lot of applicants to us and to engineering, usually a very similar skill set in terms of the quantitative skills. There's also architecture and kinesiology and music on campus. We don't really get as many sort of applicants to both those programs. But what's much more common is that we do have two other campuses in Mississauga and Scarborough, which are about half-hour east and west of the downtown core. And they all have business programs, so quite often we get applications with all three business programs to all three campuses. Something else, we don't care. It doesn't matter where you rank us in terms of your application choices. So all the applications are considered, so you could feasibly have offers from all three campuses or from different programs within different faculties.
Great. And In terms of sort of another question, this is pretty unique to U of T as well. In terms of just U of T's college system, a question that we received is actually, is there any college that is most beneficial for Rotman Commerce students? And maybe Arbab, just go to you first in terms of, maybe what college you belong to and what are some of your thoughts in terms of choosing that college.
Yeah, so there's actually no college that is affiliated with Rotman Commerce. College is your choice. A lot of students that prefer to live on residence, their residence will be based on which college they're in. So I personally commute, so I didn't have a big decision to make when it came to colleges. And I wish I actually did more research when it came to like ranking your colleges. But I'm in new college right now. It's good. It has good food, I mean, but I wish I did a bit more research when it came to colleges because you can meet some of your friends there. Your flick is can be through your college, but overall, there's no college that is affiliated with just Rotman Commerce, and you're free to pick anyone that you like the most.
Great. And over to you, Daniel. Anything else in terms of whether or not you want to add to that? Nope. Daniel,
So
just
like you said, there's no college with Rotman Commerce. Me personally, I'm a commuter. Oh yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, go for it.
Oh, okay, sorry. So, as I was saying, there's no college that's directly affiliated with Rotman Commerce. Me personally, I'm a part of Woodsworth College, and I'm a commuter, so there isn't necessarily a big decision I had to make, just like Ara. However, I do know a lot of my friends that are on residence, they tended to make their decisions based on where they wanted to live. There's residences that might be closer to the Rotman Commerce classrooms, and there's residences that might be further down into the city lifestyle. So it kind of depends on what you want to get out of your university experience. That's kind of when the big college decision starts to come into play. However, in terms of just which college to choose, it doesn't affect your academics at all. So it's up to you, just your personal preference.
Great. And sort of a next question here, and going back to the admissions sort of process. So Jeff, going to be over to you. But in terms of, we've been getting a few questions about AP exam scores. So, any advice you can give in terms of how to think about that, whether that helps with the application or if it's, not as topical.
Sure. Any additional rigor that you can apply to your high school curriculum or your high school experience is going to prepare you better for university, okay? But not all those courses are available to all students, so we don't favor one curriculum over the other. Now, one of the advantages of doing AP or other than rigor or higher level IB, if you're in that curriculum, is that it's possible to come in with transfer credits, which is a nice advantage. You get some credit under your belt. You have maybe some more flexibility in terms of how you want to approach the 4 years of the program at that point. Now, those transfer credits are not assessed until after students are admitted into the program, but it's pretty basic with AP and IB, and those are listed on the Enrollment Services website if you look under transfer credits, and it would show you, exactly what course, what grade you would need at what level to be able to get transfer credit. And something to keep in mind is that you don't actually have to accept the transfer credits. You do have a choice whether to take them or not. And we have no official advice on that. I have a personal opinion, but it's not anything that's, again, required or specific advice, official advice. Personally, I would say take the credit, but again, that's your choice.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. And maybe now just over to Daniel very quickly. So I have a quick question about scholarships. So, maybe it'd be helpful to just go through whether or not you actually apply for any scholarships and whether or not there are any specific Rotman scholarships that were available.
So, if I'm not mistaken, I believe when you get accepted into the program, you're automatically considered for an entry scholarship. However, there's plenty of other opportunities along the way. Me personally, a lot of the scholarships I applied for were outside of the University of Toronto program. So, different scholarships with banks that I was affiliated with and things like that. There's plenty of opportunities around outside of the program. However, inside of U of T and inside of Rotman Commerce, there's a lot of other scholarships available. I believe if you just search up like University of Toronto scholarships, you'll be directed to a page where you can filter which type of scholarship applies to you the most, and then from there on, you can apply like that.
Great. And Arbab, anything else you wanted to add on to that as well?
Yeah, I believe different colleges offer different scholarships as well. So you can go to each college website to find out what kind of scholarships they offer. But yeah, in my first year, I did get like a scholarship from my college, and it's been being renewed like every year. So just do a little bit of research, I would say, if for scholarships, I would say.
Tony, I need to jump in here on the scholarship. Is that okay?
Yep, sounds good. Go for it.
Okay, so both are right. The vast majority of scholarships you're going to be automatically considered for, the vast majority. But if you are a Canadian citizen or permanent resident and a current Canadian high school student, you can fill in what's called an awards profile. Your awards profile is through your John U of T application portal. If you do your awards profile, there will be additional scholarships that you can that you'll be considered for. Every year in September, I talk to students and I get, I didn't get a scholarship. How come? We go and look and we see they didn't do their awards profile. And that's not unique to U of T. That's a North American-wide phenomenon where students are not availing themselves of opportunities for scholarships. So again, if you're a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident and a current Canadian high school student, do your awards profile when you get the chance. If you're an international student, whether in or outside of Canada, you'll still be automatically considered for merit-based awards, but you should also be aware of what's called the Pearson Scholarship. Now, this Pearson Scholarship is very prestigious. It's 4 years, full tuition, living expenses, but you have to be nominated by your school. And your school is only allowed to nominate one student, okay? So it's not just for Rotman Commerce. This is across all 3 campuses, all undergraduate programs, but it is a very lucrative opportunity for international students. So those 2 things, again, to recap, or I guess 3 things. Again, automatic consideration for most. Do your awards profile if you're Canadian citizen, permanent resident in a Canadian high school, and if you're an international student and you think your school is willing to nominate you for a Pearson scholarship, you can look into that as well. Thanks, Tony. Sorry about that.
No worries. And no, thank you very much for jumping in, because I think that's a fantastic resource, and definitely don't want to leave any money on the table here. So quick pivot here in terms of just going back to Arbab and Daniel. Question that we received is how large are the class sizes? And maybe here you can maybe distinguish as well in terms of sort of first year and upper year classes. So maybe Arbab, over to you first.
Yeah, so in your first year, a lot of the classes you take are general classes, so the class sizes will be much larger. For example, a lot of the economics classes tend to be, I believe, around 500 students per class, but that's just because everyone in the program is taking economics in their first year. But as soon as you get into second year, your classes will decrease in size significantly. I believe a majority of my accounting courses are capped at 55 students. So really the professors get to know your name. There's a lot of interaction in class. And but in first year, you will feel like there's a huge class just because everyone's taken all those general courses. But I guarantee you, as soon as you get into second year, the each class has a cap size on it, and they're much more smaller, for sure.
Great. And Daniel, anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, something I really loved about my first year is that there was a good mix actually of class sizes. So as Arvab mentioned, classes like economics and management, kind of like it was more of what you see in like a movie of bigger class size, this typical university class. However, classes like marketing and finance and accounting, those were a lot smaller and it had a nice high school vibe to it. You had a personal experience with your professor. So it was a really nice back and forth. And now that I'm in second year in the accounting specialist, like Arvab mentioned, class sizes keep getting smaller because you're specializing more and more onto a specific stream. So now I have very personal experiences with my professors, able to talk to them on a normal basis. So that's something I really like about Rotman Commerce.
Great. And here we just have another sort of more technical question here, and probably for Jeff for you to answer. But in terms of retaking courses, and if you retake a course and get a higher grade, would Rotman Commerce consider then the higher grade from that course retake?
No, we'll only be considering first attempts.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification there. Another question, and sort of a question that we receive and pretty common, is actually, what are case competitions? So with that, maybe I'll hand it over to Daniel, if you want to take that one first.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually never did a case competition until first year of Rotman Commerce started. So I was actually pushed by RBAP to actually participate in my first one, and it was a very low stakes case competition. But overall, what they are is it's a nice way to network, obviously. However, it's a way to practice your presentation skills in a group setting. You'll typically get a business case of a business that's having a problem, and you have to identify ways to solve the problem. You'll get in a group, have a couple of weeks to prepare your solution with your presentation and your appendix and all the different numbers that go into it, and then present it at the end to the judges. And at the end, there's usually a cash prize involved. So that's something that kind of intrigues everyone to get involved with case competitions. But overall, the more you do them, the more you get used to them. And in first year, especially if you're in the Rotman Commerce program, you'll be introduced with low stakes case competitions that'll really allow you to get used to the way the program works and the way case competition works. And then overall, throughout your first year and then throughout your second year, you'll start doing more high stakes ones where not only is are you presenting in front of real businesses with a larger networking opportunity, but there's also a larger cash prize involved. So that's something that's really, really nice about it.
Great. Yeah, no, that's is fair enough, and especially when you can, earn a little bit more money. Why not? And maybe to RBAB, just one more question. We received from a student is, how do you find that balance between being enrolled in a rigorous program such as Rotman and networking with clubs and other companies? Maybe some of your experience, and as well as maybe from your conversations with others, just how do you find that balance?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think first year is really a chance for you to explore who you are. Obviously, in first year, we all go through struggles. There were points I was up to like 2 a.m., but I noticed through talking to upper year students actually helped me a lot. They kind of told me the tricks they were using to like stay ahead of their classes, how they were networking, and planning out your schedule actually really helps. But also keeping it very flexible is a really important thing when you're in university because it changes every week, right? I never have the same schedule every week, and so I've kind of gotten used to it, I would say. But obviously, in the beginning, it just you gotta let it give it time to adjust and ask around, ask your peers, like how are they doing this? What can they do to improve on, like networking, for example. If you're too busy studying, how do I make time for networking? I'm sure there's someone who went through the exact same process, will struggle like I did, and we'd be more than happy to help you out as well. But great question, yeah.
Great. And Daniel, if you want to just jump in with anything else you'd like to supplement there.
Yeah, if you're involved in extracurriculars and things outside the classroom, obviously it's going to be a little bit tougher to balance everything. However, something that Arvab mentioned that I believe is one of the keys to success in university is making your schedule, but making sure it's flexible. Because as Arvab mentioned, if you're involved in extracurriculars, those are never certain of what times and what days you're going to be needed. So it's important to kind of have kind of flex times where you'll be able to substitute different things out. Something I really like about Rotman Commerce is that, let's say if you happen to miss one lecture, you can go to a makeup lecture, which is at a different time during the week, and you'll still be able to stay on top of your studies. So honestly, a piece of advice I could give to kids for balancing everything would be kind of staying diligent and staying on top of everything in terms of knowing when different classes are and knowing that you are committed to extracurriculars and making sure you're not spreading yourself too thin, because you want to make sure you're giving your best effort to everything that you're involved in, and that's overall the best piece of advice I could give.
Great. Wonderful. And um, in terms of sort of, we're just wrapping up here in sort of our broadcast, and maybe I flip it over to you, Jeff, in terms of any last comments you wanted to make to both the students and the parents and anyone else sort of in the audience tonight.
Sure. Well, we're looking for strong students. We're looking for students that are engaged in the community, or outside of the classroom in the community, however you define that community. And once you're here, hopefully, you get an offer of admission, you come here, and once you're here, what I tell students every year, and this will sound familiar to Daniel Arbob, is get ready to work hard and have fun. You're still a university student. It's going to be a change. It's going to be a transition. It is a lot of hard work, but it's an awful lot of fun too. I'm still really good friends with people I went to university with.
Great. And thank you again to Arbab and Daniel and Jeff as well in terms of making yourself available for this panel, and I think it was very helpful for the audience. Now, I know for a lot of people who submitted questions, and some of them very detailed and asking for clarification, for some questions that we have not been able to address, or for program-specific questions, just want to remind you, of the resources that are available, whether it is the admissions team or the student ambassadors. So highly recommend that you check out the Rotman Commerce website and look at the resources that are available. And in terms of the admissions team, their email is rc.admissions@utoronto.ca. And you'll find this information on the website. And so for the questions and we received a number of them in terms of, specific circumstances or specific grades or specific guidance that, maybe you have heard from other sort of members of the recruitment team. And so for any of that clarification, make sure you reach out to Jeff and Daniel Arbab and the rest of the Rotman Commerce team to make sure to do your research and to get everything lined up before your application. So want to make sure that while this panel is meant to present various perspectives and be helpful, if there's any ambiguity or things that you're not sure about, make sure you reach out to the Rotman Commerce team. And with that, we are going to wrap up our broadcast for this evening. Right now on screen, you can see that there is a link to a quick survey. If you can fill that out, that'd be great, so we can get your feedback and incorporate that for our broadcasts in the future. And make sure you stay tuned in terms of we will be releasing a summary video of tonight's broadcast as well as a transcript. So if your friends or your family or anyone else might have missed it, those resources will be made available. And so with that, we'll sign off for this evening. So thank you again for Arbab, Daniel, and Jeff for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.